Welcome to the Hero Signal. Thanks for tuning in. Today's guide is going to be on Iron Man, and I have to say I've theory crafted a lot of builds, but I'm very proud of this one because it works so incredibly well for endgame content farms, and it's so easy to play with a ton of damage potential. The Metal Bomber build will have teammates raising their eyebrows during missions, but it works extremely well. Yes, the Metal Bomber is a melee Iron Man build with high heroic usage. Iron Man is predominantly a ranged character, and you have 3 different ranged weapons and only a few melee abilities. Each of the ranged abilities have their strengths and weaknesses. For example, rockets are amazingly powerful and break through blocks, but they have low stun chances and they are extremely slow. They also use a ton of intrinsic energy, and yes, right now there's a way to overcharge your supercharge meter for nearly infinite rockets, but my build will work no matter if that exploit gets patched out or stays in the game for another few weeks. Lasers have high stun capabilities and are great for AoE, but they don't do very much damage, and some of the moves are a little hard to control. And lastly, repulsors are probably the best middle of the road that you can get. They do alright damage, they have decent stun potential, they don't use a lot of intrinsic energy, but because they do everything alright, they don't do anything exceptionally well. I played the long rocket range build a lot of people are shipping, and I played the repulsor battle game, and while some of them had very specific and powerful uses, when I started doing elite brutal content, sitting far off firing away at enemies while trying not to get hit, it just wasn't working. Building for heroics wasn't working at range either. Iron Man wasn't performing takedowns from range, and melee range lasers would end up getting me killed by enemies that weren't phased by attacks. Something had to change, and that's why this build was created. In the melee tree, there is one ability, Power Dive, and then its upgrade, Dive Amplifier. It was clear that a traditional melee build wasn't going to work, and as I mentioned, the range builds were fun, a little complex, but were letting me down in other ways. I focused in on this one skill, Power Dive, and found how insanely powerful it is, to the point where, in many cases, it's not even fair. Dive Bomb is a large AoE attack that does good damage, has a decent impact to interrupt enemies, and increases the stun gauge quite well too. It's an all-around amazing ability that is great against groups, but what's even better about it is that the AoE attack can go through your energy barrier where ranged weaponry can't. The other cool thing about this is that it keeps you in close proximity to enemies so that you can get those takedowns, pick up those heroic orbs, and use your abilities as much as you want. Let's get to the build and then I'll explain how to use it. In the specialty tree, the first things you want are the EMP support heroic ability and the energy barrier. Here are the specialty tree selections. For support, the first tree we want EMP pulse, and the second specialization we want EMP amplifier. For the assault heroic ability, we want Omega Beam, and on the second specialization, we want energy condenser to get those heroic orbs. On the ultimate heroic tree, we want disruption pulse, and on the second tree, we want energy star. For the mastery tree, the first ability you want for sure is heroic takedown mastery, and the second is stun mastery. Here's the entire tree. For the combat tree, we want stun mastery, heroic takedown mastery, and then the third tree is going to be ranged combat mastery. For the ranged tree, choose whatever you want. If you like rockets, you can use rockets. If you like repulsors, go with repulsors. I opted for repulsors because they are easy to use and have a good dodge and sprint ability on them, so I went all across the line with repulsors. For intrinsic abilities, we don't really need intrinsic use that much for this build, except for maybe Hulkbuster, which you'll get to use a lot if you want, and I recommend it. So on the left specialization, we're going with increased maximum amount of intrinsic energy. In the middle, we're going with stun intrinsic boost. And lastly in this tree, overcharge heroic boost. You actually use this more than you think, since we never use our intrinsic meter with this build. Aside from using the energy barrier, you'll find yourself getting overcharged quite a bit, which will boost your heroic meters. Lastly, on the utility tree, energy shield efficiency is on the left. Tactical barrier is in the middle, and this is a big one, because you'll want to throw these barriers up when you're in close range of enemies, so you get this crit chance boost. Lastly, afterburner is what you want, not countermeasures. The reason for this is because Afterburner just has more uses. It can outrun the missiles that get shot at you, so you can get away from them, but it's also an easy way to get around levels faster, and that's important for this build because it's a really great farming build. Let's chat for a second about gearing. What we're focusing on for this build is Resolve for your health pool, Might for melee damage, and Valor for your damage potential. And it also increases your heroic effectiveness rating, which makes your abilities stronger. We will get an additional 15% crit chance from our energy shield, so you don't need much proficiency to get a high critical chance. Also, you'll want something like Gamma on your repulsors or whatever ranged weapon you're using, and then something like Pim on signature attacks. This way, for difficult enemies, you can get a positive and negative damage type bonus for applying Gamma at range, then dropping down for a heavy critical dive bomb. You'll see some very big numbers here on high profile targets if you do that. For the major artifact, you're going to want to wear the ring for its increase in orb restoration. So how do you play this build? It's so easy. You head on into the fray, find yourself some enemies, and power dive over and over again until they get stunned or die. A little hop and dive will decrease the time it takes for repeated dives, often pushing smaller enemies back from the impact, letting you attack again and again. If you find some enemies that have beam attacks or there are a lot of them, throw your energy shield down and they won't be able to get to you unless they are very large enemies, and in that case, just keep attacking away, get behind them, whatever you need to do to stop them. Definitely take note of the range of the dive bomb. You don't need to be right on top of the enemy to hit them. Let your attack go through your shield too. This way you can hit them, but they can't hit you. Once they get stunned, perform a takedown over and over. If you find yourself in trouble, like you've taken too much damage or something, use your EMP pulse to stun enemies around you and perform multiple takedowns, which will grant you your health back and start the regeneration on your abilities. Use Hulkbuster often, since you're going to be getting a lot of your heroics back really quickly. When you're faced with a bunch of little opponents that are about to die, use your Omega Beam, which is stronger than Unibeam and fires in a wide area so you can kill more enemies and receive more orbs. And that is the Metal Bomber Iron Man build and how to play it. Iron Man is a very versatile character, but this is a very simple way to play that ensures that you get plenty of Hulkbuster and heroic uptime and doesn't require you to switch around your ranged abilities in the heat of battle. If you have any questions or you want to chat about this build, pop into the comments, let's talk about it. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you in game.